Hi friends! So for today's Freestyle Friday video, I want to talk about something a little bit different. I'm probably going to say that like every single week, but whatever. Anyway, so it's getting a little bit colder here where I live in El Paso, Texas. But we don't really experience winter here like they do in other places. I think that applies to the majority of the South in general. We get cold, don't get me wrong, but we don't have months on end with snow and all that craziness. We'll get a snow day here and there, but that's about it. It's all melted by the middle of the next day and that sort of thing. So what made me think of this is basically a few months ago, I was talking to a friend of mine, and she lives in New England. And in the summer, they had a heat wave go through there, and she was talking about how miserable it was in her house because her house didn't have AC. And I didn't, that was like a head explosion to me. The idea of a house not being equipped with AC was like insanity. Because that would just not be a thing here in the South. There's no way. I mean, people would literally die, I think, and do die sometimes when, ACs fail and go out and they can't afford to fix them and whatever, mostly elderly and whatever, but yeah. So I just couldn't wrap my head around that. And so my first question to you is that something that you have to deal with? Like, have you ever been in a heat wave and, not had air conditioning? I think even cars in some places don't come with air conditioning standard. Like, what? So is that something that applies to you? Let me know in the comments below, open up that discussion. And then to kind of piggyback on that, that's Callie. Say hi, Callie. When I was in middle school, I had a couple of teachers. One was from Buffalo, the other one from somewhere else in New York. And I grew up in Southern California, so, we also didn't have to worry about air conditioners and those kinds of things. But one thing that they were discussing is they weren't always sure when it made sense to swap their wardrobe. Apparently what that means is that at a certain point in the year, they have to go through their clothes and put away all of their summer weather clothes and bring out all of their cold weather kind of clothes. And I don't know, that's probably a little old fashioned now, but do people still do that? Is that something that, because back in the day, closet space in houses were not as big as they are now, for the most part. And so people would store half their wardrobe in the basement and then, go through at a certain point and swap out their wardrobe. But, obviously it's like, I guess if you do it too early in the winter going into the summer, you're without cold weather clothes in the event that you would get a cold day. And then conversely, if you do it too early in, the warmer months going into the colder, then you might not have, adequate cool clothing to wear. And all you have is, sweaters and stuff. So I'm not sure if that's something people still do. I've never had to do that. I never lived in a place where that was something that, was necessary. Here in Texas, we go through all 4 seasons in a single day. So, you always have a light sweater on you and, your swim clothes on top of that. So, I remember a few years ago when Carlos and I first moved in together, he was living in his childhood home, and that house was a little bit older, built in the 80s. And so he had a swamp cooler, a master cool system. And so we had to decide when to swap the heater and the air conditioner, because you couldn't run both. If you have a central heating and AC unit, you can obviously run both. You just flip a switch and, whatever. But with a swamp cooler, you have to decide when it makes sense to shut down the swamp cooler and turn on the heater. So that was something that I found a little bit odd back then, because I grew up with a central heating and air conditioning system, and we also had a swamp cooler and a fireplace, so we were pretty set. And I don't ever remember having to worry about if we turn on the AC on, this week and it's cold next week, we're going to be freezing, But is that something that you have to deal with? Is that still a thing for other people? Especially places where there's extremes in the summer and the winter. what's that like? Talk to me. Anyway, that's all for today. Just a little rambling, thinking about the weather. I'm, every time I pack, I wonder, like, am I going to need a jacket? Am I going to need, flip-flops? Like, what's the weather going to be like there? So it makes sense that we talk about this sort of thing. And I think weather is pretty universally relatable for most of us since we all experience it. But anyway, I want to thank you all for watching. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, all those fun things. And we'll talk soon. You all have a good night.